Filling in tonight.
Yeah.
June meeting of the Indiana Township Planning Commission is called to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jackie, let the record reflect personnel changes for our solicitor and our engineer this evening, in the absence of two of our members. Next item of business is approval of May 27th regular meeting minutes. Anybody have any additions or corrections? Okay, Jackie, on page 3. Next, the second paragraph from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line down. It says, he also said in the. Remove the word in.
In that last paragraph, Dan?
What?
In that last paragraph?
Take it out. Take the word in out.
I can't find
Doesn't
it.
make sense.
Okay, Dan, just, where are you at? You're on page 3. Let's see.
Yeah, I
Just
see.
kind of make it-
Look, you're up there.
Yeah, right there.
Got it.
We have a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Preston made the motion, Peter seconded, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, first item of business development proposals, Canopy Ridge Plant Lot, simple subdivision.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alexis Wheeler. I'm an attorney on behalf of the applicants, MCAA Ventures. Tonight, I do have with me the MC, Michael, and the AA, Autumn, of the MCAA Ventures. And I think little Noah was just in here with us as well. So I wanted to just, provide an introduction to them. I think that, it's good that they were able to come this month, and unfortunately, they're missing out on a family vacation, but they thought that this was important enough that they rescheduled to be here tonight specifically. So I appreciate you all being here. I'm not gonna rehash everything that happened last month because that took about an hour of our time, and I don't think it's necessary to go back that far. But I will say that this board did ask us to, go back and meet with the neighbors to see if we couldn't reach, I think the term kumbaya might have been used, to describe, what we were, looking to do in the last month. I did call attorney for the Shulas on June 9th. At that time, it was expressed to me that they were not having an appetite to meet, and, that they did not, believe it would be productive to meet. So, the offer was made, it's still out there, I reiterated it today in some correspondence to Mr. Myers, but, that was that. I will say he did say that we were welcome to resend the private road maintenance agreement that we had originally circulated back 8 months ago, back in October, I think, originally. However, my clients feel that, if we don't get subdivision approval, there's no need for us to proceed with the agreement. We can proceed under the statute that I cited to you all last time regarding any maintenance or repairs of the road. And I think it's important that this commission understand as well that we do have an access easement down Monticello Road for access and utilities. It's shown on the plan, it's shown on the CELO plan of lots, which was before this commission in August of 2020. It's also expressly referenced in our deed. So it's there, it's also there for the property at 106 Monticello. Notably, it is not in the deeds or on any of the plans that have been recorded since 1949, 499 or 107 Monticello. And I believe I provided this commission last month with a B.A. Bradley plan of lots, which was the plan that created 99 and 101 Monticello. On that plan, it's clear to see the delineation of what was then the Cello property. Monticello was created by Mr. Cello. It clearly shows the Cello property adjoining them to their northeast. Does not reference any sort of easement. What it does show is a driveway exiting onto Saxonburg. Whether or not that's how it played out, that is what is set forth in the records, in the chains of title. I followed them at length. I'm happy to provide any deeds or documents or plans or drawings that this commission might be interested in reviewing. But that is what it shows. Their deeds also do not reference going back to, again, the 40s or 50s, any sort of easement onto the Cello property or what was formerly the Bliss property.
So are you arguing because of the absence of any deed right to use Monticello, those lots should not be counted as part of the 5 maximum lots?
That's part of the argument. The other part of that argument is that they do have frontage along Saxonburg themselves. And if they, did or didn't get an HOP permit, if that was even required of them at the time, that's kind of up to them, but, they don't have an express right to Monticello the way that my clients do. 105 Monticello does and 106 Monticello does. And I can get into the history of all that, but it's pretty clear that that's just what it is. They don't have an express easement to use that. That being said, I would like to offer to this board that when we first approached the township with a subdivision plan back, years ago, prior to the Saldo being even revised to have the private road agreement in it, it still had the 5 maximum on the private road, the Saldo did. At that time, I will offer to this board that it was the interpretation of the township, and it was what we were offered, is that we could subdivide not into 2 lots, but into 3. Because there were only 3 lots using Monticello Avenue. That's what we've always proceeded under the impression of. I would offer to this board that has been the historic interpretation of the township with regard to that 5-lot provision. I find it just very, I don't want to use the term unfair, but sort of unjust that my clients wouldn't be able to operate under the historic interpretation that this board might not even have been aware of because it wouldn't have been flagged for you as an issue. Because that's how your review team was reviewing it and interpreting served bylaws. So we would just offer, we just want to play by the same rules as everybody else that has historically been allowed to play. In this township, last month, Mr. Slagle said that was his interpretation. He wrote the ordinance. I can't think of a better source. I would just like to mention as well some more historic information. I was able to come across and unfortunately couldn't print out today for you all, but it's a public record. The meeting minutes from August 2020 when the CELO plan of lots was in front of you. That is the plan that created 107 Monticello. That was, proposed by, again, the CELO family. And at that time, Mr. Slagle did ask Mr. CELO, how many lots are using the drive? And the answer was 3. That did not change. Today we offer, it's still free. Even if you consider it an additional lot from that subdivision back in 2020, it would only be 4. And that's Mr. CELO, the person who owned the property, the person who did the last subdivision, the person who created 106 Monticello originally back when it was sold to the Nye Pavers, and who the road is named after. So that's what I have to offer to you. Just two sort of last, sort of legal arguments that I have for you that I'll just get quickly is that, if there is ambiguity in a zoning ordinance, the municipality's planning code, I believe it's section 603.1, says that land use statutes should be interpreted in favor of the landowner and against the extension of any restriction if there is ambiguity. And I would also just finally like to mention, and this is not something that's, being contemplated right now, but I think it would be helpful for this board to understand, that by right, this one lot that exists today, 107 Monticello, could be developed as a two-family dwelling, which is essentially what we brought to you last month, saying that right now it's the intention for these to be used for two single-family homes. Currently, that's the plan. A two-family unit would put the same sort of purported demand as two single-family homes, except for it wouldn't be in character of the neighborhood. We could also put a school there by right or a church, and neither of those things are contemplated. Again, I just want this board to understand that obviously you're aware of the great traffic impact that those would have on the property. Again, those are not anticipated, but that's what we're allowed to do. If this board has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Again, the property owners are here and happy to answer any questions, and so is our engineer. And that's just all I have to bring to you today.
Okay, thank you. If you have any rebuttal, please step up, identify yourself for the record, and
Hi, my name is Caitlin Shulo. I live at 105 Monticello. So I just want to start off going back to the meeting minutes from 2020 because I wrote the letter that you received last week and last month, and all of our neighbors signed. I have them in front of me. Yes, Mr. Cello did say 3. At the time, no one was living in his home. So he might have interpreted that as the other 3 properties that were currently using it. And I think if you do read the minutes, it continues there saying, if the roadway is still private, that is the number of lots to be taken past 5, it would have to. So I think the general consensus was this is creating the 5th. You can go back and read for yourself, but just to provide a little bit more color there. We bought our property in 2021, and from that time, I actually, knowing that there was a vacant lot right there, read this out, and there was no uncertainty that this can't be subdivided further. This is just one lot. So in terms of 107's representation claiming that we denied to meet, first of all, I don't think that one phone call from attorney to attorney is really a concerted effort. The owners of 107 have my husband's cell phone number. They've been on their property, right on the property line many times, made no attempt to speak to us. And additionally, our representation only represents us. There's 3 other people who also live on this street, and I verified with them that they did not make any attempt to reach out to any of them. In terms of whether there are 5 lots on Monticello, because I think that's the crux of this here. I think that the representation for 107 has already stated the terminology is served. Lots served by a private road. The Saldo states on page 35, section 2F, subdivision plans which increase the number of lots served by the existing private street in excess of 5 lots will require the existing private street to be brought up to public street standards. That terminology of served is used at least 5 other times in that section. That is dictating what the relationship between the lot and the private road needs to be. The Palumbos and Orban's lots have been served by Monticello for over 30 years, and therefore both have a legal prescriptive right of way to do so under PA law due to the amount of time that they've been using Monticello. Further, I think my husband's gonna give more of a history. The Orban's property was the first property on Monticello. Their home was built in 1920, and that property carved out what is modern day Monticello as their driveway and the only access to their home. They created Monticello. So to argue that they're not counted in the 5 is completely inaccurate.
Excuse me.
Yes.
What is their address?
99. Yes. And my husband, he has all the deeds going back to when it started at 25 acres, what they originally owned. Additionally, like, I understand when you look at the lot lines, when you look at aerial views, it looks like the Plumbos might have a driveway right onto Monticello, and the Orbans, obviously, their property is adjacent to Saxonburg. Or I think I said driveway onto Monticello, driveway onto Saxonburg. The Palumbo and Orban properties would never be granted a driveway or a road directly onto Saxonburg due to the sight lines. That section of Saxonburg is 45 miles an hour coming up a hill around a bend. When I need to go left out of Monticello, I have to turn my radio off and put the window down and listen because the sight lines. Where their properties abut Saxonburg is pushed even further into this turn. They would never be approved. Their only option for accessing their lots is Monticello. That's always been the case, and it always will be. Finally, anyone who sees Monticello with their own eyes, there's no uncertainty of whether there are 5 lots. Every home has a driveway on Monticello. Everybody's address is Monticello. And clearly this was evident to the owners of 107. They sent their proposed road maintenance agreement to all 4 of their neighbors. They sent their proposed road maintenance agreement of Monticello to the Orbans and the Plumbos. And rightfully so, I mean, it's very clear. And you know, the inclusion of this limitation in the SALDO, it's there for a reason, right? It's so that the road doesn't become overburdened, the landowners can manage it without involving the township. So I think that having it in place is obviously a great thing. And I would just urge you, if there's any uncertainty left in your mind about whether there are 5, it's 2 minutes up the road. I guarantee if you went there and you saw it yourself, there would be no uncertainty left. Thank you. Yes.
Are you in favor of the
No.
subdivision?
No, since we bought our
I
home,
just want to know.
I have always known, hey, there can't be a subdivision. I read the SADO, it's clear. So yes, I'm not in favor. Yeah, thank you.
Am I able to speak next?
Yes, please.
I'm coming up to me by myself. Alright, so I wanted to give you guys, I'm Autumn.
Identify yourself for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Autumn Adamak. This is my husband, Michael. We own 107 Monticello. I apologize for not being here last week. All my kids ended up with strep, so we were deeply under the weather. But I think one thing I'd like to highlight is kind of the back history of since we bought the property. So we bought the property 3 years ago. We bought it in December, and then come that spring, the first thing we did in terms of due diligence was meet with the township. We scheduled a preliminary meeting with Jeff, with Dan, and sat down and talked about zoning for medium density residential, kind of approved usage, and then because we own 11 acres, the possibility of subdivision. In talking to Jeff and Dan and looking at the way the lots are all laid out, it was Dan's opinion that because the first 2 houses on our private drive have Saxonburg road frontage, that we could theoretically divide our lot in up to 3 lots and still be under that 5 lot minimum. So we actually left that meeting, hired our friends here at Hampton to do some engineering work for us. They did, they drafted it up, they drew us up a 3 lot subdivision. And looking at that, the amount of earth moving, the scope of the project, and even just our desire to conserve the woods, it didn't lay out well, so we wanted 2 instead of 3. Went back to Hampton, had a 2 lot subdivision drawn up, brought it back to the township a second time for a second preliminary meeting. Talked to Jeff and Dan again, this time with our Hampton engineer, to review kind of what that looked like. And at that point, we were told that we needed a road maintenance agreement, which we agreed makes sense. So at our cost, we went off, we hired Alexis to draft that road maintenance agreement. It was super generic in nature, basically says if you mess up the road as an owner, you're liable to fix it. And then if you collectively, the whole wants to make a repair, we all have to vote, you know, so if there's a major overhaul, blacktopping, something like that, we would vote on that. We circulated it to the neighbors, again, about 8 months ago at this point, and it was basically no response. So from our perspective, you know, in buying that property, we've done our due diligence. We went, instead of interpreting the saldo on our own, we went before people that know best and got their guidance on how to divide the land if it was possible, or even just zoning usage. And then in doing, I guess, our deeper dig more recently, we've come to find that those first 2 lots really have no deeded access to the driveway that we do. And so it feels unfair, in my opinion, in my husband's opinion, that we'd be restricted in our ability to do a subdivision because other people didn't adhere to the method of ingress and egress on their approved subdivision. And that's kind of our perspective. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think just overall, I mean, we've always tried to take the approach of doing what is right by the township standards, and we've used your guys' guidance to take us from step one till we are here today. So we're just trying to do what is right and figure out where we have permissions to do what we desire.
Yeah,
Please
we're-
give your name for the record.
Yes, Mike Castiglione?
And we're totally open, if there's questions on anything, our use of the land or intended use of the land, anything like that, we're happy to answer any and all those questions. We're at the back of the private drive, so it would obviously never be our intention to damage the road such that we couldn't access our own property. Us and the neighbors are kind of the back tree line, so it doesn't make any sense.
You know, I was gonna say, the prior witness, and I'm sorry, I forget your name, but I thought you had said that, these folks who own, lot 107, were arguing that they're not to be counted among the 5?
No, I did not.
Okay, cause clearly that's not the case.
No, I just said that they sent the road agreement to all 4 neighbors, so clearly in their mind, they're on Monticello, they have to participate in the road maintenance.
So the issue really comes down to those 2 lots.
Correct.
And our ordinance, which says that a private road may not serve more than 5 lots. And query whether our solicitor has any input on whether, you know, the way the ordinance reads and says that, does that mean that you're only served by the private road if you have the legal right in your deed to use the private road?
No, from my reading, there is no legal terminology assigned to the word serve here. So there's not necessarily an answer when it comes to does legal right versus actual use over time, which would necessarily sort of trump the other. It comes down to your interpretation of serve and what you're giving more weight to.
I just wanted to add that it seems like there's 2 sections that we're talking here. One of them has to do with when you increase the number of lots served by a private street, and it sounds like the word is used as served. But the part that actually defines private streets in 29530 says that private streets may be considered by the township with subdivisions or PRDs resulting in 5 lots or less. So they use the term resulting in.
True. I was looking at the saldo because it does directly contemplate this situation. It explicitly says in situations where roads have existed before the saldo was amended, it shall be determined in instances where 1 or more private streets are in existence before the effective date of this chapter, and said private streets shall serve no more than 5 lots. So I do interpret this as saying that they should not serve more than 5 lots. However, if you look at actually A5, it does contemplate, should the planning commission decide to permit a subdivision to create more than 5 lots, there's then the imposed requirement that that street be brought up to public street standards. So if this were approved, you could, there's sort of different ways to do it. If you interpret this as not having 5 lots being served, then those 2 sections wouldn't apply. If you interpret this as already having 5 lots being served and this would create a 6th, then there could be a modification or waiver. It would have to be for both of those sections, because you would be waiving the requirement to not permit more than 5 lots and the requirement to have the street brought up to public street standards, if that makes sense. And then there would be the maintenance agreement as well. So you're looking at potentially 3.
If I just wanna say briefly, it's unfortunate tonight. I mean, I'm totally, understanding that these individuals that are here with us tonight are excellent and, totally have their ear to the ground in the township. We did have this conversation with Gavin and Dan, and that conversation was that you can create 3 lots if you wanted to. That they were not interpreting those first 2 lots as being served by. That has been the township's historic interpretation. I just wanna make that clear because I know that you asked the solicitor.
When you said
We also
first 2
did.
lots, which lots?
99 and 101 were not being counted towards the served lots of Monticello. So it was 105, 107, and 106. That was the interpretation we were given. And that's why when we requested a waiver, it was the waiver for the private road agreement. It was not the waiver to exceed 5 lots.
Now, why did Gavin and Dan say those lots did not count?
Because they had frontage on Saxonburg.
Was there any other reason?
That was the primary
Historical-
reason.
that's
And
historical
Was
precedence.
there anything in their deed that said they had access to Monticello?
There's nothing in the deeds for 99 and 101 that say that they have access. And again, I will tell you that there is the B.A. Bradley subdivision, which I provided you all with a copy of last month, that shows the driveway specifically exiting onto Saxonburg. I understand that there's an argument about historic use, whatever. Those lots do not have express use. And I would offer they don't have prescriptive use, because if they have been using Monticello, it's not been hostile, it's been with acquiescence, which is a requirement for prescriptive use.
Seeing that I sell real estate, did you buy this property through a realtor?
Did you what?
Did you buy this property through a real estate company?
We bought it, from.
Private
yes,
owner?
It was, yeah, he had a real estate agent, but from a private owner.
Well, but it was,
Closing.
why didn't, if you wanted to do this to this property, why didn't you get this resolved before you purchased the property?
He's asking why we didn't get it subdivided before because we didn't. So to answer,
I don't think I understand the question.
Yeah.
So to answer that question specifically, we didn't go down the subdivision route until the township told us we should go down the route because we were permitted to do so.
So
That's
when
why
you
we're here.
initially bought it, you were gonna build one home.
We didn't know what we
We
were
bought
gonna
it
do.
to play with our kids in the creek
Yeah,
and in the woods, which we use it now as,
Okay.
that's surely it.
Now as my daughter's getting older and we're enrolled at Hartwood and we're in an apartment currently, we wanna build our family home on the property. But before we did any of that, we sat down with the township to make sure we knew what we were getting into and kind of figure out, what is this property based on the zoning able to do? It was at that discussion with Jeff and Dan, that we were told, based on how historically things are counted, we'd be able to subdivide into 3. And so
Now,
that's,
did that conversation happen before you closed on the property or afterward?
that was after.
That was
So
months after.
we bought in December and then we had that meeting in that spring following our purchase.
My point is that, normally you wanna make sure if you buy something, you can do with that property what you wanna do.
Yeah.
And it seems like you guys bought the property, then you're trying to do what you wanna do. That's all.
I think
Yeah, I mean, right now, we understand from the township standpoint that we could subdivide. So then we said, well, wouldn't it be great if we could give an opportunity, say, for our kids to have a house later, or her parents to have a house later, or something, before we start to go down the road of bringing utilities back or something else, if we choose to build, why don't we understand what options we have and put that in front of us if we ever want the opportunity later down the road to actually take advantage of?
Yeah.
Because when we get too far, it just becomes too complex and too disturbing to the road or others, where it's like, if we have the opportunity, we might as well understand if that's possible and then take it from there as we seek to do something with if we do.
Yeah, and if you guys, you see the drawings in front of you, the land's challenging. To get utilities to that, we have to kind of dig 500 foot through the woods to hit our manhole and then take everything out the front. So from a subdivision perspective, if we're gonna bring utilities to our site, a second lot makes the hefty cost of utilities more digestible. Especially, as Mike mentioned, right now, prior to our apartment, we lived in a house of my dad's. And so to be able to do that at a later point for my dad would also be ideal, I think.
I think there is some precedent to this. 15 or more years ago, we had a subdivision request on a private road. And historically, there were 2 private roads that served this development. And the 2 roads were actually connected. Now, in each deed, it said these properties were for this, had access to this private road, these properties had access to this private road. They came to the township and asked for a 5th development on one of the private roads because there were only 4 properties whose deeds said you have a right to use this private road. In actuality, what happened was, because of lack of maintenance, the connection between the 2 private roads was severed. And two of the properties were supposed to use the other private road, just started using one private road, which said there were already 6 properties using it. And we have no idea how long that had been going on. It's one of those things that goes way back to 1930s or whatever. At that time, the township's interpretation was, it's based on what the deed says you have access when you count the number of lots on the road, and it was approved to add that 5th lot on the one, even though there were already 6 properties making use of that private road. So you're aware of that?
Yeah, I think ultimately, it's a difficult situation because you would, when looking at the plans of plots, typically it's understood that you are looking at deeds when you're determining road access and who is using what. So I do see where you're coming from when it comes to, as far as doing, this is something you could do. Again, I think it just comes down to a judgment call where now we're finding out that the actual use maybe isn't matching what is shown on the deeds and on the plans. I also agree with what Attorney Alexis said earlier, which is the MPC does generally ask that ambiguity be resolved in favor of the landowner, which sounds bizarre because they're all landowners here, but it also says it should be construed against the imposed restriction. So in theory, because they're asking for this lot to be added in, that would be, it should be interpreted in favor of allowing the landowner to do what they're wishing if it's ambiguous. Obviously, there were conversations earlier where it was understood that this was something that's possible. That's why the answer just comes down to how you are interpreting this, because I see on other sides, typically you do want your deed to show that you're using the road to protect against this from happening. So it really just comes down to a judgment call, what are you viewing as shall serve? And can I, just to clarify, you said that you are permitted to build more than just a single family house on the lot currently?
Medium density residential.
Yeah.
I have the zoning provision if you want a copy,
Yeah, could I?
just the table, the use table.
That's
I think you said at the last hearing you'd be willing to commit to only building one single family residence.
We weren't here.
So they're willing to commit if it's required to no further subdivision of the property. Their plan currently is to build just one other single family home on the property. Whether or not they're willing to restrict their use is a conversation that I think that they need to have. But they said that they were willing not to further subdivide the property into a 3rd lot or whatever else. But that's their plan, is related to just one.
I'm Keith Chola, 105 Monotone Drive. Just on our last comment, if anybody wants to go back and look at the meeting minutes from last month, to his question of whether or not they would commit to 2 single-family homes if a subdivision was granted, that is what we said.
I couldn't even hear you.
Say that again.
I said, if you look back at last month's meeting minutes, right, the question was proposed by Councilman Blow, that is a councilman or commissioner, if they would commit to only building 2 single-family homes if subdivision was granted. And at that meeting, it was stated yes. So the record will reflect that. Whether that was misspeaking on behalf of the applicants or not, I'm not sure, right, but that was on the record. And that's also a condition that we would like to see. That was one of our big concerns, right? So, I brought the question of the 5 lots, obviously the big point. I brought to you guys, if I can present you guys, a exhibit, which, it's the exhibit from the subdivision back in 2020, you see the subdivision, sorry. If you like a copy.
Yeah, perfect. And do you want one of these? It's just this one.
Um,
I have one of those.
Okay, so on it, I don't know if you guys would like a copy of the extras. Yeah, on it, it numbers the lots or the homes and the year in which the homes were actually built, right? Just to kind of give everybody clarity as to how old these properties are and have been, right? The very first house that was built was the Orby's house, built in 1920. My wife mentioned it, right? All of this property used to be part of a 25-acre parcel dating back to like 1800s. And it's been carved up as time has gone on.
Excuse me, it's the first house, number 1.
Correct. And at the bottom, if you see the legend, it lists the year in which the home was built. right? So, the very first home was built in the 20s. That's when what is Monticello Drive, the entrance onto Saxonburg, was created, right? As time went on, it was subdivided, different families owned the property. The very second home that was built was what we live in now, house number 2, the CeeLo home, right? That was a 12 plus acre subdivision. The next year, they sold off a parcel to the Nypavers, their home at the end of the lot. The council mentioned the Bradley plan of lots that was created in, I believe, the 70s, which created 2 different parcels, right? The first home was still there, built in the 20s, the very original house, right? And they landlocked themselves, right? They actually have continued to carve the parcel off of their own parcel and landlocking themselves off of Monticello Drive. They've always used Monticello Drive. That was their driveway to begin with. And then in the 90s, I think 93 is when parcel number 4 was sold to the Palombos, who now live in that home. And then in 2020 was the subdivision that you see on the plot, which separated lots 2 and 5 from one another. And we purchased lot number 2, and now the applicants own lot number 5, right? So those are the 5 lots that have always used Monticello Drive. The deed record, right, unfortunately, as they carved out lots, they landlocked themselves and they cut them off from their own driveway, right? Whether it was overlooked by their legal counsel or whatever, right? Unfortunately. And I don't want to point any fingers at anyone, right? Mistakes are made. Without actually going out to the property and seeing it, without understanding the history of the properties or taking the deeds back to like 1800s, you might not realize how things have been created as time goes on. But there's no doubt that all 5 of these properties use Monticello Drive. And I have all the deeds if you guys would like them. I don't know if the solicitor wants to go back and go with each and every one, but I do have them if you'd like them. Right, our concern is, 1, a commitment at a minimum to 2 single-family homes. If for whatever reason the subdivision is granted, we hope that it's not, we don't believe that it should be, we believe that should be a condition. 2, right, the utility situation is difficult, and getting utilities back there is going to negatively impact all of the individuals who live on the road currently, right? So one of the conditions or requests that we have, which we communicated to council, which we did, and I will say, I had requested that our council, Jeff Myers, reach out to their council last week. It didn't happen until today, for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it didn't happen until today. So we did present some items, some concerns that we have, right? Because nothing was presented to us to address any concerns that we voiced at last month's meeting. There was a 5-minute conversation between councils. Basically, it was kind of more like an impasse. But nothing was presented. None of the other landowners on Monticello Drive were approached regarding the road maintenance agreement. Like our council only represents us. They haven't heard anything for 8 months. And I don't fault the applicants for thinking that they could do something if they were told by, advised that they could. But like I said, mistakes are made, right? We move past them, but hopefully you don't make 2 mistakes. 1 mistake dictates another decision to mistake, right? That's what we're hoping for. So, if anybody has any questions for me, please. I looked into this quite a bit, and I do have old deeds. That's the deeds.
So, you're saying that you would prefer for it not to be subdivided?
Correct.
However, if it is, to only be subdivided into 2 lots.
With the condition that only single-family homes.
Single-family.
And the other thing, right, is the utility issue. All the utilities, other than sewage, you're gonna have to come up through the easement, through the yards, right? So if you think about it in phases, if somebody only develops one thing now, and they have the option to develop something further, right? You're digging up every yard multiple times, especially if you're running water. You're gonna throw in 2 water lines, you're gonna throw in 2 gas lines. And we would also request that electrical be underground. And there are mature trees all over the place. So
Mr. Shula, if I could, that's actually what they're planning, is if they
Okay.
have 2 lots, is to run them all for both lots at the same time.
Oh, that's great.
So
That's
But that
the
wasn't
thing, right?
communicated, that's great.
So that could be an express condition that you would agree to.
I have a quick question. Autumn, you stated that to help with the cost of running utilities to have a second lot. If you're using it for family, how does that help with the cost?
It's more digestible mentally to, if you have to spend 300,000 to dig through the woods, if you in your head, you can say, but later on, I'm gonna have this home for my children or my dad or whatever it is, it's definitely more digestible.
Okay.
You can kind of get there mentally, and then, you know, it's all the costs stacked up, it's,
The basic concern is like, okay, you agree to subdivide, somebody can sell off the lot, right? That's their ultimate goal is to sell, which is just a concern. So, we haven't received a response to those yet, hopefully we do.
We got them today.
Yes, no, I said hopefully we
Yeah.
do, yeah, hopefully we do, yeah, so I don't fault you for that. And I also said, like, I don't fault anyone in the township who may have come to the conclusion that he did by just looking at a lot lines without an aerial, and without looking at it, without seeing where the driveways are, but there was reality to it.
You understand that the township, we have to look at what's in the documentation.
Absolutely.
The deeds did not say they have access to Monticello Drive. There's no way the township could even know that, okay?
Correct, and I'm wondering to what extent, like your concerns over utilities, could utility work need to be done without this subdivision? Like, is that just a lawful use, current use by the landowner that could be done now, regardless of the subdivision?
Oh, no, they absolutely can, no one's questioning that they can run utilities now. No, it's the volume of utilities, right? 2 units or 4 units, however many are being built, right? The number of lines that have to be run, the number of trenches that have to be dug. It's only a 25-foot road, and there's already multiple gas lines, multiple water
Normally
lines.
what they would do, they'd run one gas line to serve both lots, one water line to serve
You're
both
nuts.
lots, one
I
power
actually,
line.
I already contacted Oklahoma Water Authority, and they said they would have to run 2 separate lines. They're not allowed to run one single line. It's in a private easement. It's in a private easement. You're not allowed to do that.
I think that can be looked at.
Well, all I know is that's what they state, right? That's what they state, so.
So if I understood what you're saying, if they would agree to only build single-family residences and deal with the utility issue, and if they also agree to repair any damage that construction vehicles did to the private road, that would probably take care of most of your concerns?
I mean, those are our main concerns. We still don't believe that it should be granted based on the number of lots that are on the road. Like, I'll say this, whether you count them or not, right, they're used. And they always have, and they have a legal right to use it, whether it's in the deed or not. So,
Well,
the
that's
added.
question.
tr-
No,
yeah.
and I appreciate
Yeah.
your argument that
Yeah.
they've been using it, but that's different than a legally enforceable right to use it.
And we're happy-
Query
and
whether
we-
they have that at Bush Gate or not.
And we own Monticello, that's the other thing, our property, like Monticello up
Is-
to the end of, we own it, it's not shared. So we are happy to grant the Columbus and Orbans legal right of way as soon as possible if that's what's required.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And we've
think that,
considered doing that the past year.
I mean, this isn't gonna be like a, we'll do this if you do that type of a conversation, but we have relief if that were to be, something that we're contemplating. So I'll just leave that there.
The private road maintenance agreement, as a railroad, we had issues with this, and we were able to get, it's like watching paint dry, you go to Harrisburg, I was up there a couple of weeks ago, okay? However, we were able to get this law passed. Who maintains your road right now?
I do.
Okay. But, I mean, I don't know the legality of this, but in theory, they should have a private roads maintenance agreement if there's more than one property.
That's actually what we brought to you in terms of our modification request. The one modification request that we did request was from relief from a private road maintenance agreement. And the way that we requested that is under the saldo, we can request that if we can provide an equal or better substitute for the requirement. And that, at that time and in the letter, which I have copies of, but I think you probably all have as well, is, the state law that that I think you might be referencing, that I know, Commissioner Moore, you had said that your real estate, lobbying group had helped pass actually back in like 2021. And I will say the law came into enactment after you changed your saldo. So this was something that happened subsequent, which says that all owners using a private road have to pay their fair cost for maintenance and whatever else, unless this, and it says this law will not apply if there's a private road maintenance agreement that's in place. So it's one or the other, but I think that the idea and what you had said last month was that it was to effectuate essentially like a private road maintenance agreement under the law of Pennsylvania for private road users. And that's what we offered as our better
I think
equal
the
substitute.
state law brings some ambiguity into it itself, because it says the cost would be divided amongst the users. Are the users the ones whose deeds say they use it, or is it everybody who has a connection to
And
it? We don't know.
There's not law on it yet either,
I know.
so.
There haven't been any decisions in the courts.
The last comment that I'd just like to make, I believe, well, Gavin was the one who all comments were directed to, so you probably haven't seen anything. Right, the issue beyond what's being presented to you guys is a civil matter, right, civil disagreement, and also the overburdenment of the easement, right, and Monticello Drive, right, with it being created in 60 for the naipairs to be able to get out to Saxonburg, right? That's how it was contemplated as a single family home, right? And allowing additional subdivision of everyone using that same easement, right, is putting additional burden on that easement. And Jeff Myers has reached out to Gavin and they discussed, right, that issue and presenting that concern, and if need be, having to take it to court to be able to address that disagreement. Unfortunately, hopefully we don't have to do that, but that is something that obviously I don't have background and understanding, but he does, which he did communicate to Gavin, which unfortunately is not here. Any questions? But I can sit down.
I guess the way I'm leaning right now, we have a precedent that we've used in the past, which could be applied here. And I would think I'd be leaning toward approving the subdivision with conditions that only two single-family homes could, or one single-family home could be built on each parcel. The disturbance for utilities would be minimized as much as possible, and any damage during construction would be repaired by subdividers. Now, knowing that, and just, are you aware of what's going on in Harrisburg? I'm sure most of us aren't, right? The State House is talking about, and maybe they've approved it already, I don't know if you know this, about any lot that's classified as residential can have an accessory dwelling unit on it, which means every one of these lots in your plan could have another house put on it, which, and I don't know how they would deal with the private road issue in that case.
I haven't thought about
Okay,
that.
so I would strongly encourage you to write to your legislator and tell them, forget about doing that, okay? They're also limiting what the municipalities can do about it as far as setbacks, minimum sizes, heights, all that stuff. You know, even you could have a rental unit, you could have a house in your backyard you could rent out. We wouldn't be able to control that.
Now to press it over all the townships.
Yeah, so you know, be aware of this coming on, that's coming out of Harrisburg.
If you can. As you might know, we're about 5 to 10 million homes short in the country. And that is an argument that's being used throughout the country to allow more than one dwelling on a house. I mean, I'm not saying I'm in favor of that,
Yeah.
but this is one of the ideas that we talked about.
And that goes against everything the residents of Indiana Township are telling us they want the township to look like. They want the open space, they want single family homes and stuff.
I also could suggest, would you view it as a benefit if, let's say, the subdivision is granted with the agreement that only single-family homes can be built? Because right now, a church could be built there.
Oh, yeah, no, that was the request, that it would be.
Right, so
Or
it
that that was granted, yeah.
That, I mean, I think poses an lot that would substantially increase traffic. So could it be viewed as a benefit that now this issue is brought to your attention? You have the ability to speak to this other person and maybe get an agreement in place that does restrict to the residential use that you're looking for, because currently, without the subdivision, it appears as though a school could, be put there.
Yeah, but I would think,
Yeah.
I mean, the way that standard goes, yes, a school could be built there, a
It would
church
never
could
be
be built
approved.
there, but on a public road. Now, if that's going to be proposed, that road, Monticello, would then have to be brought up to township standards
Right.
as a public road, because you're gonna introduce the public onto that road to visit that church
I,
or that school.
I don't wanna disagree about this or anything, but I didn't see that requirement that it would be required to become a public road, and actually in our deeds it doesn't. And not that this is gonna happen, I did do some thorough research into it.
Okay, but you also said you were here 2 years ago and involved in all these talks, and you just came on board, what, 3 months ago when you were asked to do the
Actually, a year ago.
research?
A year ago.
But when they came in and sat down, your clients, you weren't involved. We had 2 advisory meetings here, you weren't involved.
Yeah, and at those advisory meetings was when we were
So,
advised.
just to be clear for
3
the
or 2.
record, you weren't partaking in those conversations,
No,
She was at the third,
correct?
I was at the third.
and she was
You were at
informed of the
third,
second.
you weren't at the first 2. You made it sound like you've been involved since the beginning.
She was involved,
I
behind the
haven't been
scenes with
involved.
us.
To some extent, I mean,
No.
I'm an attorney.
You weren't at those meetings.
So Mr. Kurtai, I appreciate your input. I'm just reiterating what was provided to me, if there was any question by this board, that's what we were told.
Yeah, and they were told those reasons because the Orban's property has frontage on Saxburg Boulevard. Okay, the Nypaver property in the back had a 20-foot right-of-way that Dan pointed out might be an issue to where they possibly could add a third lot in. It wasn't where they were going home and saying, you could do 3 lots, but you could do 2, you might be able to do 3. So, and that's all part of the discussion. It's not our job to research deeds.
Right.
We're looking at paper just like anyone else is. So, just to be clear on that.
If I may, the reason that we are mainly concerned with subdivision in the first place is because, one, the lack of communication from 107 from the beginning. When they first bought the property and went out and were planting trees along the property line, I ran out there with our baby, super friendly. We had a nice conversation, but unless we approached them, crickets the whole time. And our neighbor Carolyn, her mother is a Nypaver, she was here last month's meeting. She talked to one of their contractors once, who said that the plan was to put 2 duplexes on their lots. Representation, this is just hearsay, so take it for what it's worth. She spoke to Jeff Myers this month and mentioned duplexes, this month, after last month's meeting. And the whole property is purchased under their LLC. Sure, you can do that, people do that for different reasons. And like, it has a subdivision name, a cute one, so like, it just all plays into. And additionally, they've had a very large greenhouse on their property for, I don't know, years now, just sitting there.
Not built.
Not built, because they realized after they couldn't build it until they had a home. So it's just like, the whole commercial aspect to this
That's my
is
personal
what concerns
greenhouse.
us.
So, I understand that there's been a lot of communication through lawyers and not through neighbors. And so I would like to just, recommend and note that my clients are happy to meet with you guys, to talk to you guys. I've made that communication towards Jeff. I cannot make that communication towards you because I'm not allowed to talk to you. And similar, like vice versa. So I think that maybe we've just been missing each other a little bit here. I did make a
It's
comment
been about 3 years.
I did make a comment about duplexes, the same as I did this evening, just letting him know that that's an allowed use.
Yeah, aren't those arguments though that you're making, understandably, and your concerns about that, a reason to, have some satisfaction if we have as a
Absolutely.
condition?
Yeah, I just want
Okay.
you to understand why we feel so
Yeah.
strongly about this. So it's unfortunate all around, because the rest of the neighbors get on great and everyone's really in agreement, so it's unfortunate.
Any other comments?
I make a comment.
Then you're next.
So, once again, Mike Stigman, I just want to be very clear. I reached out to Ethan before we bought the property to speak to him very cordially. We've spoken many times about issues with the road, how can we help, things that are happening, introduction, talking to each other. we stopped truly engaging when we got called by his lawyer. I think that's yourself.
Jeff
I'm
Myers.
not-
Jeff Myers, wherever, I apologize for that.
He's an innocent bystander.
And then we were like, well, if we are now being engaged by lawyers, like,
Once you get lawyers involved,
We're going
as
to
a
step
lawyer,
back.
I know
Take a
it
step back.
chills the
Yeah.
conversation,
so from that standpoint, we have taken a step back. We have done work for our neighbors to cut their trees down when we're cutting trees and helping out. We don't believe we've ever done anything negative to the neighbors besides keep to ourselves and play with our kids on the land. And we're out there for 2 hours because we have a baby that needs to eat, and we get home and we have no bathroom. We have nothing on the land. So we go, we play, we leave very quickly.
And I have planted 74 trees, so she's
So-
correct.
Ma'am.
Hi, my name's Lily Plumbo. I live at 101 Monticello Drive. I've lived there for 32 years. Never have I been told I don't live on Monticello Drive. The address was assigned by the township to us as living on Monticello Drive. If we do not have an easement, we do have a prescriptive easement. We've been there for 32 years. The Orbans have been there longer. I do want to say that at the last meeting, they were told to reach out to us. Nobody has reached out to any of the neighbors at all concerning this at all. Also, I'm wondering, they did have drilling equipment down there the last 2 days because the land is undermined, and it had been brought up that there were big, massive vine holes down there. And I'm wondering what the results of that were. And, like, who oversees all of that? Because I don't feel like that ground back there is safe, and it could definitely have detrimental, effects on our property as well.
Do you want me to address that?
Yes.
So we had core sampling done to see if the soil could even withstand a build. As is required, we're talking to an architect about if we did build a house, if the soil could, if it was possible. The neighbor on our right, I don't know their address, they're on Maple Terrace. They had some settling issues with their home when they built it. And he warned us about the soil, and so we took that into consideration with our architect and had soil sampling done to make sure we could build a house, should we choose to. So,
And I think to your point on the back of the property, I think when we purchased it, it was a concern of ours as well. I think Victor Sella, I believe his name.
they had the Army
He had
Corps of
Dave-
Engineers.
Yeah,
in.
some Army Corps of Engineers. Doesn't think the neighbors mentioned the same thing, but there's some report
Mhm.
from some government official, EPA, that went back and inspected it,
It
that
was surface
essentially
mining.
the mining was subsided, and there's no further subsiding that could occur because of ABC reasons from this report, so more than happy to share it with anybody.
All right, anything else from anybody?
The Saldo states 5 lots served. There's 5 lots being served on this property, on this drive now. It is not anybody's fault that lives on that drive now, that they didn't do their due diligence and check the laws at that time.
But I think they told us they did do due diligence, and now you found the 3 other lots that specified access to Monticello. And like I said,
Then why did they
the
send us a
precedent
land
we followed-
or a
we've
drive
had in the
agreement?
past says if it doesn't, even though you use it, if it doesn't say you have a right to use it, we don't necessarily have to count it. Okay.
But they sent us the road agreement, so they obviously had thought we lived on the road
Well,
and
I
had
think-
use of the road.
I think, under the state law, which occurred after the maintenance agreement was put into our saldo, it's probably ambiguous as if there wasn't a charge, who would they charge it to? And it would probably depend on who was on the board of supervisors whenever that occurred. Would they just look at the deeds to see who has legal access defined for the road, or would they go out there and look at the driveways and count the driveways and do it that way? I don't know what they would do at that time. To me, that state law is somewhat ambiguous. Now, unless it clearly says everybody who has a connection to it, then that would clarify the situation. So, no matter how this goes, I would suggest that you need to look into having some kind of a maintenance agreement to define who would be responsible for what in the event that ever occurred. Because the township has a real interest in making sure that emergency vehicles can access every property on a private road. And if Jeff were to go out there, or our police department or anybody, and say, there's a problem here, a fire truck can't get through because the roadway, the branches, crowd the road too much. The township, they'll probably send you a notice, say, correct this in so many days, we'll come in and do it for you and send you a bill. Okay, so a maintenance agreement would define how this cost could be divided at that time, so I suggest you really consider doing that. And whether this gets approved or not, okay, because you still got their one lot back there.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I guess based on our precedent that we've had in the past, I mean, I would tend to say, let's approve this, but with some conditions. One, you could only build one single-family residence on each lot. Two, you minimize the utility damage. I don't know why they'd say they have to run separate lines. That doesn't make sense to me. And, that's about it.
It may,
And repair any damage to the road during your construction process.
it may have something to do with the private drive not being a public right of way.
I don't know whether that would make any difference, because right now, I think last month, people said you're having problems with water lines or something, because each one's serviced by a different water line. It seems like one main line and just branches would be a heck of a lot more efficient and easier to maintain.
I think we have to talk to them about it.
Yeah, logically you'd think that we would be able to do that, but when I spoke with Oklahoma Water Authority, just asking him that general question in the building, right? In the situation.
You said Oklahoma?
Oklahoma Water Authority, that's who services.
Okay, that explains it.
Yeah.
I understand.
They don't wanna get involved in a possible dispute across a private easement, right? If it's a public, they have full authority to work on it, so that's the situation.
I'd be willing to make a motion to what I just said.
I'm inclined that way as well.
The Board of Supervisors, we're just a recommending body, the Board of Supervisors are the final ones that have to say, so they may or may not agree with us.
Before that motion, just to clarify, I would clarify if you are interpreting this as only having 3 properties served by this road, or if you're motioning for a waiver.
No, that only the properties whose deeds say they have access to the road count toward the lot counts.
Alright, and then I would address if you are looking to recommend a waiver be granted for the maintenance agreement based on the state law or not as well.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go along with that too, because state law was written after ours, so it doesn't say how, but as I recommend, they should come up with some kind of maintenance agreement, just to avoid any ambiguity in the future if something should happen.
Yeah, okay.
And I also one question, it's right, if it would be approved or proposed, right, by the board, it would be also, right, there's no further subdivision, it's just these two lots, right? There could be no further
No.
subdivision.
Because at that point, we'd have 5 lots. Even though I think back in 2020, it said there were only 3 lots on the private roads, this would actually allow for 1 more.
Yeah.
We could add that as a condition, no further subdivision of that property.
They're mental.
Jackie, did you catch that? I'll make that a motion, those conditions. Did you catch all that?
3 and then you added the 4th thing? Right?
Sorry, I was just reviewing the plans, and just to clarify, I wouldn't promise that no further subdivision could occur, because it's my understanding that there are 2 lots without deeded access to that
obviously if someone amends or corrects their deed to have access.
I'll keep the motion just so we got it.
Yeah, just for
No
meeting
further
minutes,
subdivision.
yeah.
Whether you have 3 lots, 5 lots, 6 lots, no further subdivision. We have a second.
I'll second.
Second by Preston. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your time. You guys can get back to your data center.
Please consider
All you guys will leave.
putting together some kind of a maintenance agreement.
Absolutely great. I'm actually very interested in data centers as well.
I haven't looked at that. No, they're not very hours. Very stressful.
Just out of curiosity, who are you? What are you doing?
WPXI, here for the data center stuff.
Oh, okay.
I'm going on
Thank you for
TV.
letting us know.
Yeah, no problem.
Are you still recording now?
It's not currently, no.
Okay, next item of business. Solar,
The data
data
center
centers.
ordinance, right?
ordinance.
So I prepared essentially a starting point proposed draft of this ordinance for the township's review. The intention is to look through it and tailor it to the specifications of the township to best suit your needs. Generally, I always recommend we start with zoning, because you want to determine where this is being placed. Just to make sure everyone is aware, in Pennsylvania, you cannot outright ban data centers. It's a lawful use of land, so the township would be sued and lose quite a bit of taxpayer money if they attempted to do this. So you have to create an ordinance that not only allows data centers to exist on paper, but also allows them to exist in practice. So it needs to allow enough lands to feasibly be used by developers for this legal land use. So for zoning, I can start off the discussion. I know for solar, you ended up doing the office flex commercial and the light industrial districts. Do we have any opinions on where to allow data centers?
I would only put light industrial.
Only light industrial.
Only light industrial.
Okay.
The next one's office flex commercial, which really doesn't fit a data center. It's not an office. It's not commercial establishment. It's private.
Okay.
And I'd be interested in, all the various conditions that have been imposed on noise, on
Oh, yeah.
electricity usage, et cetera, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We'll take light industrial. I'll look at that in light of everything else we decide and make sure that there's enough. I'll look at the plots of land and see if we might need to expand that, but I'll,
There'll be a whole different set of setbacks
yeah.
related to them, unlike a normal setback for a light industrial district, so.
Yeah, we can go
they're all
through.
gonna change.
That's debatable whether we need separate setbacks just as a data center or any other light industrial usage.
Sure. So I suppose, do you wanna go through, I have everything you could think of pretty much is in this ordinance now. If you wanna go
Let's
through.
go through page by page and
Yeah.
anybody has a comment.
Sure.
So are we done with page 2?
Page 2,
Yep.
yes, we've got zoning districts. Would you, I'm assuming conditional use is what you're looking to, yeah.
Definitely conditional use.
Okay.
Any comments on page 3?
Yeah, this is dimensional standards, setbacks.
Okay, comments I had on page 3 is minimum lot size. I don't know that we want to set a minimum lot size, because data centers can be all different sizes, and we might get to a position where there's not a lot that anyone would fit on.
Yeah.
You know, so I think we just should eliminate that.
I agree. Some municipalities have chosen
And
to.
the next one, the maximum building height, I mean, we limit it to 35 feet for houses. I don't know why don't we say the same for data centers? Why should they be different? Why should they be anything different? And I'm not sure the additional 15 feet on the roof for air conditioning stuff, I can't imagine an air conditioner being that high. But there were some exceptions in the zoning ordinance for things like steeples and chimneys, they could exceed height. So you might want to think about that.
There was a provision in there where you could extend the height up an additional 10 feet if you would allow for an additional per foot
Right, setback,
push.
right, and I think we should follow that.
So you wanna keep it at still 35 with that.
With that
in
provision,
place.
yes.
I will put that in now. I'll look into it off of a gut feeling that seems it might be potentially low. Just depending on how much land can be used for data centers. If you're only allowing a small amount of land, and then they also can't be very tall, you're just increasing the risk of potential challenges. But I'll look into it and see what more restrictive.
And the same with item number 4, it said percent area coverage.
Mhm.
Right now it says 60% light industrial coverage, just keep it the same, won't be different.
Yeah. Okay. And for setbacks, I don't know if you're aware, there is, if you want to, you can define sensitive receptors. Essentially, you can establish a subcategory of whatever you deem to be things within the township that might require more protections. Could be residential developments, churches, schools, elderly home facilities, and you can include that as a separate category and offer it its own distinct requirements. So you could say additional setbacks, additional like lower noise permitted if something is close to, if data center is close to a sensitive receptor. So that's just an option if there's a few things you're worried about potentially being an issue. You could have very specific additional setbacks if that's what we're looking at now.
My feeling is just to keep it simple, just use all the setbacks for light industrial, and not discriminate against data center.
Yeah.
The only bad thing about a data center is we had one when I was working, we had one on our campus. It was a fort. We had minimal windows, just a solid brick wall, although we call it a bunk. So, you know, other than the fact that it maybe aren't very pretty to look at, I don't see whether they're any different from anything else. But you've dealt with the other issues with noise and vibration and that sort of thing later on. So I don't know that we need anything special on the setbacks.
I think, and this is just my personal opinion, setbacks sometimes are favored because noise is difficult to regulate when it's this low constant hum. Because if you think about it, it's not a very high decibel volume. You can get into very complicated tests that tests for continuous noise, it's basically continuous humming. They're complicated. I have some examples of it. They can be included if you want. But generally, it's also found that, you know, bigger setback requirements, maybe more screening requirements are ways that have the just byproduct effect of reducing that low hum.
But what would we do in the case where somebody bought an existing building that's already in light industrial, like one of the Bear facility on Indianola, now said, I'm putting a data center in this building, it's already there. It has setbacks that would base for light industrial. Are we gonna make them move the building to deal with setbacks?
Yeah.
No, this is okay if it's brand new. We can't say this will always be brand new.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the same argument could be used for solar. You just passed a solar ordinance, you know, anytime anyone owns a plot of land, if they change their use of that land, it can be subject to new regulations.
Well, I mean, that's my opinion,
Yeah.
and, you know,
I can-
it's something we need to think about and see
Yeah.
what makes sense. Maybe if there's some other ordinances you can walk through and stuff to see how they handle it.
Yeah.
Especially in converting the existing building into a data center. Anything else on page 3? Peter, Kristen? page 4. We only have one comment on page 4.
Yeah.
Down at the bottom where you talk about the orange trees.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, we had an arborist here, and we were talking about a PRD, and we were discussing spacing of the trees. He said 10 feet's too close. I think he said 15 would be more.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did the 25 feet in width number come from? For the-
Just out of all the
Landscape
ordinance I've
buffer.
seen, it's one of the more common ones. The landscape, that's entirely customizable. It could be one sentence if you wanted, it could be extensive. It really comes down to what you want to require. I've seen it, the detail in it varies completely by municipality. So it's just aesthetically what you
You're
prefer.
talking about all the spacing on the different tree types.
Well, just landscape.
Oh,
Yeah,
Maybe part of the setback distance. I'm just wondering
yeah,
whether it's even, could be even wider than that.
yeah.
And whether you're aware of other municipalities that have made it wider than that.
It can be wider. That typically depends on the zoning district itself and the plots of land you're working with, because it's obviously cutting into usable land. It can be wider. I also find that sometimes later on in the discussion, people start to think, well, maybe I want a security fence around the entire data center, which you want to consider that in terms of the landscape buffer too. If you want a really wide landscape buffer, does that then make a security fence a little less feasible? So it could be widened, but I would hold off until I look at your zoning district, just to make sure it's not like the extent to which it cuts into the available land.
Where you go from page 4 to page 5 with the different kinds of
Yeah.
trees, I just can't
We can take it
vision
out.
what that's gonna look like.
Yeah, this is essentially.
This is 75 feet, that's 100 feet, this is
Yeah.
20, you know.
I can see if I'm sure I can find an example of this in practice.
That would be good.
Yeah, to send you a
Just so we
picture.
can see it.
Yeah.
Anything on page 5? How about page 6? Page 7? My only comment on page 7 was the maximum decimal levels, top to bottom. That should also apply during outreaches. I think the noise has to be limited at the property line, whether they're running normally or if they're running on generators.
Understood. I
Because
think
right now it says it doesn't apply.
Right.
Other times.
intentionally because 60 to 50 is a generally pretty low decibel level, so it's really not feasible that a backup diesel generator could ever really meet that demand, especially when considering like the low setbacks you
Well,
have.
but they can put screening and stuff around it
Mhm.
to keep it at that level. Because I'm thinking back to the problem we had a year ago in May when we had power outages for 3 and 4 days. You know, I know the power company prioritizes how they try to restore the power. I don't know where the data center would fall in their priority scheme.
Yeah.
It could be, you know, I'm sure it's well behind hospitals and all those kinds of facilities.
Yeah.
So,
I can look into, most of what I've seen does have that carve out for backup power systems to make it more feasible for a developer to meet these standards, but I'll see if I can find any that have, you probably need some sort of different regulations in there addressing the backup generators to make it a little more, give them a path. towards-
Jeff, didn't we have something along these lines for, the wells, well drilling, and some noise limits?
We could probably pull from that.
Yeah, yeah, right, look at that. They would use heavy running equipment too,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I'll look at it, I just have to make sure it's feasible with, because data centers are so inherently tied to mass power consumption. It is, I just have to make sure it's not overly restrictive, but I'll.
Okay. Anything on page 8? How about page 9? I had one comment on water and sewer, item I. I'd like to add, I think we ought to add in their statement, any capital expenditure expenditure to supply water is the responsibility of the developer. We don't want the utility company to put lines in and then use that as excuse to raise people's water rates.
As of now, in terms of water and electricity, there is no agreed upon way that it would be legal for any municipality to require a developer to pay any additional cost. Because that's their own utility service, so you can't require that any increase in rates.
Okay, but
Or do you mean that, like,
when
putting a line
we
in
have
itself?
a development, I mean, most often if they need to run water lines and sewer lines to the developer pays for that extension in the
Yeah,
services.
okay.
That's what I'm saying
Got it,
here.
the extension.
That's both for the water and the electricity.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not talking about extra generators, stuff like that. I realize
Yeah.
that grid governs the rates anyway, not just state of
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
Okay, perfect.
Item number 10, page 10, I mean. Page 11. Boy, you did a good job through here. 12. 13. That would be the same thing here for the electricity on item number 2. $14. On decommissioning item II, my comment is great.
Thank you.
I like that. That's really good. Anything else on 14?
It seems thorough.
15. On page 15, the top one, the financial security. We need to make sure that the financial security they provide is also updated every 3 years.
Yeah.
I think we need to explicitly state that.
Mhm.
On parking.
Yep.
Lexi, what do you normally see?
Actually, I just saw one that was 2 parking spots per one employee measured at the maximum shift height. So basically, whenever there's gonna be the most people working, you need 2 spots per that number. And that seemed a little more practical from my point of view because square footage
Yeah,
doesn't always.
I crossed out all the square footage. stuff
Yeah, it
out
doesn't
there as
necessarily-
well. I said, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because you might have 10 employees per square foot, you might have 1 employee per square foot.
Right.
And also there at the end, whichever is lesser, you can take that out. And
Mhm.
what I said is, 1 parking space for every 1 employee based on the maximum number of employees on site during the largest shift, plus X number of additional. And I just said,
Yeah, that's-
pick 3 out of the air, but it could be 5, it could
Yeah.
be 6, in case they get visitors or whatever.
Let me understand what you said, Lexi. You're basically saying double.
I said double because the idea is, well, what about the shift change? You need someone coming in and parking before someone comes out and gets in their
Well,
car.
that's a good point.
But again, I have to look at the district because that would be something where if you're
That might
doubling.
make sense. I didn't think
Yeah.
about shift changes.
Yeah. I'll have it as, the shift change one, but I'll look with Gavin at the district itself and see if that's an easier way to cut down on spot space.
The problem with a shift thing is though, they have to deal with, they might have different people working different shifts. Like something might work 8-hour days, other ones 12-hour days or 10-hour days. So we have to,
We worded as just 2, the same exact wording you had, but 2 spots per each employee measured by the maximum shift. And then it kind of just covers everything for the
is that everything on page 15?
How do they even really know that when you're given approval?
For parking, it's implicit, a requirement would be for the developer to provide documentation of how many employees they're. Yeah, I can add it, so do you want, in the application section, I can add in, there is a written narrative which discusses the proposed data center operation and uses. I can add in there, detailing anticipated hiring, and it can be updated. Yeah.
ready to approve it?
Yeah.
Page 16,
Yeah.
any changes there?
Hopefully not. We don't have to discuss too much there.
Yeah. Okay.
So one question, there's a House bill pending, that would empower local municipalities to have a 180-day moratorium on data center applications until they thoroughly review and develop the ordinance, et cetera. Query whether we should.
My recommendation is always, you can never rely on anything ever being passed by the legislature. It's great if it happens, but to bank on it invites risk, because, you know, if someone submits an application before anything's on the books, it becomes far more complex. So I recommend.
But if it were to pass before we finalize the ordinance,
Yeah, you can
raising
pass
the
more
thought
than-
about whether we should take advantage of that, or we can decide.
Any law they pass about data centers, I'm bringing it to your attention, and we can take advantage of it however possible. But I think it's smart, especially considering how long the process is to get this started.
Sure. Oh, yeah, I'm not saying.
Well, I thought your last page, your 2026 might be optimistic.
I know, I actually thought about that, yeah.
I don't think this should take that long. I think they wrap this up here within another month, or two at the most, and then get it on to the supervisor. I know we'd have to have a public hearing. And
Yeah, that's it.
You know, my concern is, say, we have 500 school districts. What's the name?
502.
Okay, that we'll have 502 data center regulations. You know, I mean, and everybody has something different. You know, I mean, it's not much we can do, you know, but it's just the idea, you know, people be shopping, you know, why should I build one in a township where, West Fair gives me something better or something like that?
Great.
That's fine, of course, if they want to go to Westview, they can go there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but the
Yeah,
data,
we won't have any. The opposite is having the state dictate what the rules are. Now, that doesn't take into account the fact topography and all that kind of stuff going on, roads and power supply. We don't wanna go there if we can avoid it, definitely not. They're gonna screw it up if they, sorry, Steve.
I don't think we want to be aggressively competing for data centers in Indiana Township.
But if one came here, we want them to be able to construct something that we and all of our residents can live with. Sure. And, you know, won't be a distraction to the municipality in any way,
Yeah,
shape, or
and
form.
every municipality out there, they have to produce an ordinance that a developer can feasibly meet all the requirements and build a data center.
Right.
So regardless, people can build a data center anywhere in PA.
And they're gonna go
That's
where
their
it's the
state
cheapest for them, really.
law. Yeah, or, I mean, there's a million factors. It gets complicated with data centers. Who knows, there could be electrical hookup components, like, there's so many things. But I think just making sure that this suits your township needs as best
But
possible.
we don't wanna make our ordinance so strict that some activist judge will say, you guys don't know what you're talking about, I'm gonna give them what they want.
Right,
And
that's
take it out of our hands totally.
the balancing test involved. And I think primarily that the only thing that I saw that might run that risk is just making sure there's enough included in that zoning. Because if there's not enough viable plots of land, it's vulnerable to a challenge legally. So,
Can we have AI if we don't have a data center in?
yeah, you're laughing, but I don't know if you're serious. Yeah, you can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's the bottom line, because everybody wants the benefits that come from data centers,
Yeah.
but nobody wants them next door.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But I just wanna say thank you to you and Gavin for getting this baseline, pretty solid document.
Yeah.
Just has to fine tune it, I think it'll probably be there in a couple months. I would
Oh, yeah,
anticipate.
and based on the
Ready
number
to ship it
of
off.
items we talked about this evening, it shouldn't take long to really address those things.
and if
Really
there's-
didn't take long with the solar panel either, so I think this was.
Yeah, and this
should go.
is like pretty in line with most municipalities that I've seen and worked on, so I can mark anything that's maybe a little different than what you might see, just so you're aware if it's something a little different you offered, but.
And I can remind everybody, leave these here on your desks, pass them on to the supervisors. I'll make it
the
official.
My co-counsel, Chris Capone here.
Yeah.
Mistaken for a lawyer. John Newman, 222 Chatham Lane. I just want to say thank you to everybody getting moving on this. Just as a private citizen, but also as a representative of District 5. A lot of people are worked up about data centers, myself included. Speed matters. Jeff's joke aside about, approving this tonight. From what I heard, it sounds really good. I do think the solar ordinance gives a firm foundation for a lot of stuff we'd like to see. Light industrial, that sounds like a good idea of where to put it. I know a lot of people are happy with the decommissioning protocols that we're in with solar, so with data centers, if these GPU chips or whatever become obsolete in 18 months, we want to make sure whoever's making money from this is taking this stuff down and bearing responsibility for it. I know there's a lot of shell games with the corporations that own these things and private equity that's funding them and hedge funds, so gotta make sure that we lock down whoever's gonna pay for that. Sounds good in there, and I'm hoping there's also similar protocols with dealing with first responders. You guys did a good job with that,
Yeah,
with
there's a
solar.
whole section in there.
So I hope that's also, because these data centers are also, there's a lot of big issues. I would just say, let's go quickly. I would really love to see this going, and I think most people who are here probably aren't gonna wanna quibble with these things. I think if we're ahead of the other municipalities and getting something on the books, that's 9/10 of the battle. I wanna see that done, and I just wanna be a model for the rest of the communities to say we can do this quickly, we can hear people out, but more than anything, let's just get something on the books, and let's protect what everybody loves about Indiana Township, so, thank you guys.
My overriding issue is, not, you can't trust folks, okay? We don't want, Facebook, et cetera, to push the cost onto Indiana residents. But it is for the data center people to pay for that, because we already have electricity. So it's not like we're looking for it. We've already paid for electricity. So if they need extra electricity, that should not be our expense, that's.
Well, one of the points I mentioned this last month is electric rates that we pay are based on northern states. So if they build a data center here, the rate might go up. If they build it in Ohio instead of here, the rate still is gonna go up. So, we're
Right.
we just have to
We
try
have so much
and
to
deal
do
with it
there.
best
I
we
will
can.
say, in anticipating optimistically potential legislation that might be passed, this does require extensive energy use plans to be submitted and for the developer to note the energy efficiency and data of any, impacts on electric rates or availability for other uses shall be directly attributable to the data center project shall be documented. So if a law is passed saying these developers will be held responsible for paying any directly attributable increase in utility cost, you'll already have the information there. You don't need to take time to put a system in place to record those numbers. So that's covered to the extent the township is able to at this point, but
Well, that's out of our hands.
yeah, but it's ready, it's in place for if it's ever put in your hands, they are already required to get these measurements in terms of their direct increase.
Anything else? Have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second it.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.